The shelf is coming down, so that means it's seed sowing time. Haven't even started yet and I've already got a splinter. Oh, it's going to be one of those days. Okay, so like I said, it's time to start my January seeds, and I've actually got more of them to start than I was expecting, because I've still not finished my plan, guys. I'm not even going to call it a plan, it's not a plan. I've not even finished organising my seeds into when they're getting sown yet, but I've done January and February, and yeah, I've got more than I expected. So I have a cup of coffee, I have some chocolates, because you know, there are still chocolates and cheese left from Christmas. I have got my box of seed sowing compost. I've not made my mix yet, but my seed sowing compost is just regular compost that I have sieved to make it very fine, and then I've microwaved it to sterilise it. What I've done is I've microwaved it, or you can do it with boiling water, or you can put it in the oven, but you kill off any of the little bugs that might be in there, any little bug eggs, all of that kind of thing, like fungus gnats, and you try and kill off any nasties like pathogens and molds and things as well. Okay, now I've got a video all about doing that, and I'll link it at the end for you if you've never done it before, and I'll link you the video all about making your own seed mix as well. I've got you covered, guys. But for now, I said this was my compost. I need to make it into my mix. To do that, all I'm doing is adding some vermiculite. That's still to get done. But I thought these are all handy things that I'll tell you about, because seed starting is seed starting. You put a seed in your mix, in your compost, whatever, and then you let it grow. It's that simple. So to make it a bit more useful and interesting, I'll tell you about all my bits and pieces as I go as well. So first things first then. Let me tell you how blooming cold it is in here. My watering can has completely frozen solid. It is -4. -4 outside, which means it's pretty much -4 in here as well. And everything freezes. So I've had my compost in the house to try and keep it warm, because obviously I'm going to put little seeds in it. Now I'm going to take it back indoors and into my glorious little seed starting station. So it will be in the warm, but you know, I didn't want it out here and frozen and then I can't use it. So yeah, so first things first then. Seeds, compost, trays. Now I've said this before, and I've done a video all about all this stuff, and I have said there are so many pieces of kit you can have for doing this. There is no 100% right or wrong. Everyone has different things they like, and they like for different reasons or even different purposes. This is my two main things I use for seed starting. I've got these little trays, and I've got these little module trays. So the difference being, this is just one surface and you put all of your seeds in here, and then you have to actually prick them out when they're ready to move. Pricking them out simply means you dig the seedlings out to then move them on into, say, their next size up, one of these, a pot, whatever it is. These, you don't do that, because there are lots of individual tiny little pots, if you like. Now, most people will probably have a smaller one than this for sowing seeds. I did try the smaller ones. I'm not a fan, because I just found that I wasn't around often enough to be able to keep an eye on it the way I wanted. I quite like this one for me, but you do you, guys. You know the motto on this channel? It's you do you. So I'll tell you about my stuff. Now, the only problem with this in January time is it holds an awful lot of little plants, and I may not always have enough to fill all these little gaps. So sometimes that can be a bit annoying and a bit awkward, which is when I use these. So let's look at what I'm sowing then. I forgot to sow spring onions. I have sown no spring onions, so I'm going to sow some now. If you're using hardy spring onions, like White Lisbon do a hardy one that I use, you can actually sow them, especially if you've got them in a greenhouse, and keep them going through winter and then put them out when it's a little bit warmer early spring, and it just gives you that head start. I forgot to do it, so I'm going to get them going now in the hope that I will get spring onions a little bit earlier. Now here's the thing. what you guys might not realise is I suck at spring onions. I find these really difficult to grow, to be honest. I can grow onions, but spring onions, for me, they seem to take forever and then suddenly they're onion sized. So I'm not giving up though, because we use a lot of spring onions, so I'm trying again. So these you can see, I know they are winter hardy white Lisbon, but they're in my packet. I don't know what happened, maybe the packet split or something. I'm also going to start my basil now. Okay, here's the thing with this. You don't have to start basil in January. You can leave basil until kind of March time, once it's nice and warm and bright. Basil are one of those things that I find take absolutely forever. So I'm going to get it going early because I've got the benefit of the heat and lights of the seed starting station. So I'm going to get mine going now. And it's the sweet Genovese basil is my favourite. That's what I'm doing. I'm also going to get some lettuces started. Not a lot, just a little bit. Because again, lettuce are one of those ones that I find just takes a wee while. So I'm going to get them going, but I'm going to try something new. So I've got a romaine lettuce here, a tricolour romaine, and I've got some oak green leaf. Now, I've chosen these two because I grow my lettuce in my green stalks now, rather than in the beds, because, quite simply, it's the most fabulous convenience. The lettuce in the green stalk is nice and out of the soil. It doesn't get dirty when I'm harvesting anything round about near it. It's just fabulous to grow in the green stalk. All of these, you can grow them in your beds. You don't need to grow them somewhere fancy like a green stalk. It's just what I'm doing. That's them. The other thing I'm going to get going, oh, and I forgot to get the stuff for it, is my broad beans. I told you I'm going to do Sutton. Now, this is a dwarf broad bean. You could have had this started in August, and I think most of the folks that grow allotments and do a lot of broad beans probably started theirs already. Again, I never got round to it, and I'm so late with it. So I'm going to get this going now. Now, when I say late, I'm not technically late because I could keep sowing this all through probably until April. But I wanted an early start, and to get an early start, you have to sow it early. And I forgot. And lastly, you know I'm doing my peppers. Now, I told you in the last video, King of the North as always. Okay, now these are my seeds. I save them every year. I've been growing King of the North peppers for years. So that's mine. But I told you in the last video, I'm going to do the Orange Horizon again, because my little experiment last year ruined my pepper year for me. It may have looked great to you guys on camera because I still had a lot of ripe peppers, but it wasn't as good as I normally get. And that is because I brought my pepper plants out into the greenhouse before it was warm enough, and it stunted them. So I decided I'm going to give those peppers another go. So I've got Orange Horizon, and I have got Golden Cal Wonder, which is yellow. Orange Horizon is orange. I'm going to give them both another try this year, just because I feel like I didn't give them a proper shot last year, and I feel guilty. Poor little guys. So that's me. Right, so let's talk about this thing, because I said I forgot to get some of the trees out. The basil, I would normally do either in one of these or a small pot, because it's super fine seed, and I would broadcast sow it. What I'm going to do this year though is, I'm actually going to sow it in here. Now this is a bit of an experiment, a bit of fun for me. But I've got some of these weirdo little seeds sown kind of things to make it easier. I'm going to give it a try and just see. And I'm going to try and get things sown in here, because I figure I've got enough that I could get one tray going in here, and it might make it easier for me to manage, and these might help me do that. So, basil. Normally I would broadcast sowing something like this. I'm going to try this. Spring onions, I would normally do it in here and just do a little pinch of seeds in each, because I can grow spring onions in little clumps, and it works brilliantly that way. My peppers, I will use these because I get a single plant in each one, and I can easily be transferring them up the stages. Lettuce is just another one that is so easy to broadcast sow, and it quite likes to be on the surface and getting a lot of light, so I'm actually going to use one of my trays for my lettuce, just because I think that'll work well. However, let me move this. The beans, forgot. Okay. This is something called a root trainer. Okay, now what it is essentially super long pots. Okay, root trainer because it lets the roots go down, big long tap roots. Okay, now these are specifically for plants that have very long tap roots that don't like to be mucked about with and moved around. Now you can grow broad beans in normal trays and pots and that kind of thing and transfer them on, but you might get a better result if you use this. Okay, now these beans, sweet peas, peas, that lots of things like that, you'll see people using these for them, and that's what I'm going to use. Now again, I don't need a lot, so I'm not going to fill this tray up. I'm possibly only going to do maybe 8-ish, and we'll see how it goes. But these, what I love about these root trainers, because for years I used the little flimsy plastic ones, and eventually they just disintegrated. These are quite solid, I like these ones. And the good thing is they come apart to make it easier to get the little plug plants out of there and then transfer them on. So again, I said a lot of it is about the gardener's personal choice and things they like, and that's what you can see with me here. However, before I can do any of this, I need seed starting mix. And this is where my tree comes in really handy. And I'm not going to lie to you, this is going to be blooming cold. Yep, because it's been in here with me, so it is now cold. So there'll be gloves going on. Now, quite simply, seed starting mix is different from potting mix because it's much finer and it tends to have less compost in it, if any at all. However, right, seed starting mix is different from potting mix simply in the fact that seed starting mix is finer because you're often using the little seeds. It's also finer so that there are no air gaps between the seeds and the mix, so that you can keep that moisture against the little seed and therefore keep the seed moist, because the seeds need moisture to germinate. What it also is very free draining, because you don't want the seeds sitting soaking wet. You might want them moist, but you don't want them wet, because then you risk them rotting. Now, the thing is, I said there's usually less compost or no compost in seed mix. Potting mix, you will have more compost, and the simple reason for that is seeds don't really need much in the way of nutrition at all. In fact, when they first start, they don't need any. Everything they need is contained in that tiny little seed. But once those true leaves develop and it starts properly growing into a seedling, then it needs nutrition, and that's when you switch from seed mix to potting mix. And quite simply, and I tell people this, if you make your own seed mix and you don't use it all, you don't have to worry. It's not a waste, because to turn it into potting mix, all you do is add more compost. It's quite easy. So there we go. So this is one of the things. Seed starting mix is super, super crumbly. So you can see, even though this is moist, if I squish it together, it crumbles so easily. It doesn't hold its shape because there's way less compost in there that would be the thing that's holding shape. I have quite a lot of vermiculite in mine. Now that's just how I like it. And like I say, if you want, I've got a video that will give you my recipes. My recipes are super simple. I don't do any of the fancy stuff at all. It's super, super simple. So it's great if it's your first time doing this kind of thing. But I have my mix. Let's start. I'm going to do beans last, because beans I will give a potting mix rather than the seed starting mix, because beans grow fast, very fast. We'll do that last. So we'll start with peppers. Very, very simple. I've got seed starting mix in whichever tray, pot, module tray, whatever it is you're using. And you'll see that I'm pressing it down a little bit. Now it is a little bit, it's not a lot, but I'm just firming it in there because these have holes in the bottom and I don't want it to fall out. Now I'm going to take my gloves off because I just find it easier dealing with seeds without gloves on. I know you were all shouting labels at the screen. You guys know me well. Labels. Don't know where my pencil's gone. I've lost it again. I think Kate steals it. So I've got 3 types of pepper then. So let's get labels done. So I have King of the North. I have Orange Horizon. Oh, I'm going to need another one for here. And I've got the Cali Golden Wonder. Or the Cal Wonder rather. Golden Cal Wonder. I need another row. Now how I decide how many rows is simply, I want to sow enough seeds so that any that don't germinate, I still get the amount I want. But I don't want to sow so many that I end up with lots and lots of plants that I don't need. I realised I'm probably as well just doing this all in one go. We'll start that again. Okay, so I've got my compost in, I've got my labels in, because guys, I can't tell you how important it is to label things. I guarantee when you sow your seeds and you don't label them, so many little seedlings all look identical, and you have to wait till the proper grow before you can work out what they are. Take it from me, I've been there. Right. King of the North peppers. As you can see, I've got 2 rows of these because I grow more of these than anything else because I love them. These are super reliable for me. They give me massive harvests. They ripen before the end of the season and they give me big, thick-walled peppers. I love them. Nobody will ever convince me to not grow King of the North peppers. Nope, not going to happen. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 seeds into the centre of each of these little modules. The reason for that being, one might not germinate and then I've got the other one. That easy. And then, now here's a trick. Don't put your seeds back in your envelope over here, because if you drop them, you're going to get random seeds in places you weren't expecting. Don't do it in your seed tray for the same reason, because you could get random seeds in here. Do them off to the side somewhere where it doesn't matter if they hit the floor, and you can sweep them up afterwards. Again, these are all things I've done, folks. I've learned from experience. So first peppers are done then. King of the North. Next one, I want the Orange Horizon. So here we go. Now, it's exactly the same. The thing is, right, I'm growing bell peppers. You might be growing chili peppers. It's exactly the same process. Here we go. I'm only growing 1 row of these. Same again, away to the side. Not got as many of my Golden Cal Wonder, but here we go, Golden Cal Wonder. going to have to remember and save seeds from these. There we go. So the pepper seeds are in. I'm just going to do this so I'm nice and tidy. Pepper seeds are in. Next thing I want to do is cover that over with a little bit of compost, because it then means the seeds are covered and keeps them moist, because they need that moisture to grow. I could leave them on the surface. The light wouldn't affect them negatively. It would just be easier and quicker for them to dry out, so that's why I'm covering them. For covering, I'm just going to have to go barehanded. All I'm doing is just a light covering. It doesn't have to be lots. If you're unsure, think about the size of the seed. Okay, how big is that seed? If it's a big bean, you're going to want more on top than if it's a little pepper seed. And then I'm just tapping down on top to make sure that's in contact. Peppers are done, that easy. Okay, next. Spring onions. Now, spring onion seeds are much smaller than pepper seeds, and I'm going to show you them. And I'm gonna show them much nearer the surface because of that. So some of these are a bit empty. So I'm just going to make sure there's more in there. I haven't had any chocolates yet. Damn. Right, spring onion. Let me show you these seeds. So you can see they're black and they're quite small. And again, another of Eli's top tips, because these are black, you will not see these anywhere near any compost or anything, so just be careful. But with these spring onions here, I'm going to pinch. I'm just going to put a little pinch in each cell. Because, as I said, they're just going to grow as little clumps, that's fine. When I put them out into the garden, they're going to be in little clumps. They'll be perfectly fine like that, they're small. I don't want these to be big bulb onions, I want them to stay small-ish. So there we go. Spring onions are done. See, this is really easy, isn't it? Quick, easy. Now, basil is the next one I'm going to try and do. Now, we like our basil, so I'm going to go quite a lot. We use a lot. I make pesto, use it in all sorts of cooking and salads, sandwiches. We use it all the time. And like I say, you get all sorts of different types of basil. So if you've never tried it, try growing some different types to see what the different flavours are like. And you even get colours. We grew purple basil the other year. Makes for a very strange pesto, but it's quite cool in a salad and things like that. So 3 rows of basil. And I mentioned basil are one of those seeds that are quite small. So I've got this. Now, I actually bought these as a joke for Kate one year, and she loved them. I thought it was funny, but she actually ended up loving it, so I thought, well, maybe it's worth a try. You put the seeds in here, and you can see it's a wee chute for the seeds to go down, and it's got these little ridges, so you can tap it, and the seeds don't run out too quickly. It also has this lid that goes on the top that's got different size gaps, and there's markings so you can see, and that way you can turn that so the hole the seeds come out of matches the size of the seeds, so you don't get too many in one go. So let me see. Basil. Sweet Genovese. This is my favourite. It's great for pesto. So I'm going to put them in here so you can see them. Look at that, how small that is. Tiny. So I'm going to put this back on. And I'm going to put it on one of the small holes. And how this works, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, folks, is I can do that, and I'll only get a small amount of seeds in each pocket. Now that hole is obviously too big because they're running out too easily, so I'm just going to make it smaller. That's better. Look at that, one at a time. So again, I only want to have a couple of plants in each cell, but I'm going to put a few seeds in, because that way they won't all take. It gives me a chance. And you can play tunes on it. Now the bright horrible green's actually really good because I can see those seeds quite easily. Okay, Kate was right. I'm going to stop laughing. This is actually really good. I can't believe it. That was nice and controlled. And then easy to put them back. Just make sure there's nothing in there. And there we go. Now I will probably grow basil multiple times. As in, I'll sow seeds multiple times throughout the year. Because like I say, we'll use a lot of it. If you own quad grows or chili grows, basil works fantastically well in those. But one thing to be aware of, with your herbs, you're not looking for them to flower. So if you're going to be growing these anywhere that you want to be feeding them, nitrogen feeds are great for these. Things like grass feed is fantastic for things like basil, where you're actually wanting a lot of leaves and not a lot of flowers or fruit. Okay, now same as before, I'm going to cover these over incredibly lightly, because again, basil doesn't like to be buried deep. So it's a tiny bit just to help keep the moisture in. You can see the difference by how much I'm adding here compared to what I put on the peppers. It's not necessarily that I'm trying to cover the seeds. I'm just adding a bit more to help. There we go. And again, pressing it in. So that's the first one done, module trays. Next one is broadcast sowing. So let's do that. I'm not going to need this, although that was fantastic. And we're just going to have a break while I have a chocolate and some coffee. Now this is another reason why some people like using trays like this. This is called a tamper. It's homemade, but it's something that is the size of my trays. So it means that I can press that compost down nice and firm. It makes it easier for the seeds to be in contact with that seed starting mix. Again, you want them to be in contact because you want them to have that moisture all around them. Now, lettuce seeds. One of the things I've found is lettuce seeds germinate much easier if they are not buried. So I don't cover my lettuce seeds over. I leave them so that the light can get to them, and I've found my germination is much better that way. Everyone has their own way of doing things. I know a lot of folk will put a very fine dusting. They'll use a sieve and put the finest dusting on top. I've just found this works better for me, and as I say, it's all about you do you. So I've got two types of lettuce I'm growing. So I have got my romaine tricolour and my oak leaf lettuce. So what I'm going to do is very, very simply, I'm going to divide this tray. There we go. And I will put labels in, but that just helps visually for me. And we have romaine, which will be in this side. And we'll have oak leaf in the other side. Now, as I said, I'm going to broadcast sow. What that means is I'm going to finely sprinkle it over. I'm not going to sow it in lines or anything like that, but you can. Sowing in lines is very traditional. We call them drills, and it's how people have sown seeds for yonkies and yonkies. I'm just going to do things my way. Okay, so lettuce seeds, you're going to notice there are different types. So I'm going to show you. These are the oak leaf. Now, they're all usually this elongated shape, but you'll get different colours. These are quite dark, and I've had some that are quite light, but they're usually this shape. They're very, very light and small. Like I say, I'm just going to sprinkle them across the surface. I don't get the best germination rates with my lettuce, so I do sow way more than I need, but I don't sow a lot. And I'm going to put that back in here because, like I say, I don't get the best germination rates anyway. And another thing to be careful with lettuce, I don't know why, lettuce seeds seem to always be staticky and they stick to your hands very easily. Romaine, same again, let me see what these look like. Now, romaine lettuce and gem lettuce are some of my favourites. Ooh, there you go, perfect. So it's the same elongated shape, but these are very, very light. You would think that would make them easier to see, but because of that vermiculite, not as easy as you would think. There we go. There we go. Now, with these, I'm going to give them a press down to make sure they're in contact. And then I'm going to make sure I don't have any of those on my fingers before I do it on this side, so I don't mix them together by accident. There we go. That's the sown bit done, the putting them into your mix. Next, even though this compost is moist, as I said, I want to give it a water. Now, I can't do that because my watering can is completely frozen solid. So I'll have to do that when I go indoors. One of the things to be very aware of, if you water from above, so watering can, whatever it is you use, be careful because you can just move all those seeds around and you could end up with them all in one clump in one corner. What you could do is you can actually put this into a tray of water and just leave it to sit for like 20 minutes, and all those holes in the bottom will let it soak up the water into the compost and get to the seeds. You can do that with both of them. So different ways you can water things. Okay, so that's broadcast sown, sowing into module trays. Let's do the beans. With beans, I'm not going to use seed starting mix, so I'm going to add in a lot more compost to this. There we go. So as you can see, this is a lot darker because there's more compost in it. And once you have grown things like beans and peas, you will see how much sense that makes because they grow very fast. Much larger seeds, you'll see in a second. So we've only got the 3 of these rows, so that gives me 12 spaces. Now these are much bigger. Much bigger. There's your difference. So compared to the lettuce or the peppers or the basil, now when you have these large seeds, people worry about which way up. Okay, what I do is I put it on its side, and that way, whichever way is up doesn't matter because the roots and shoots will come out of these ends and it'll be fine. But the reason I put it that way and not that way is because if that is sitting flat and it's getting very, very wet and doesn't germinate quickly, it can rot. That way, water can't sit on top of it, whereas if it's that way, water can sit on it and rot it. This way, water can't sit on top of it, it's less likely to rot as quickly. It's not impossible, but it's less likely. So I put mine in that way. Now, given these are much bigger seeds, you can see I'm going much deeper. I usually go in up until my knuckle. Okay. And I'm quite excited about these this year because we do like a nice broad bean. In fact, we like a lot of different types of beans. Hence why I had to make a decision on which ones I would grow because I don't have infinite space. So that is all my seeds. So they're back in the box. Last thing I need to do is cover this over, and as I said, I've gone much deeper. And I'm just making sure I'm firming this down. Again, what did I say earlier? So that the potting mix, the seed sowing mix, your compost, whatever you're using, so it is in contact with that seed, in this case the bean, all the way around. Keeping it moist. There we go. Right. The difference with this one, I am not going to grow these indoors. I'm going to leave them out here in the greenhouse. They'll be a little bit slower to germinate because it's very cold, but these are hardy. So when they do germinate, they will grow in here nice and slowly until it is time when it warms up, where they'll really ramp off and I can get them out. And it still gives me that head start. If I bring these indoors to the heat and the light indoors, they'll just grow far too quickly. And I don't want that. So I'm going to leave them in here and put them on a shelf so they're in the light and they'll get the sunlight during the day. And it might take them just to that little bit warmer. But the others are indoors. So I will catch you indoors with them. There we go. Now, lights. At the moment, the peppers do not need grow lights. They just need heat, and once they germinate, then they need the lights. However, these little lettuce on the surface, as I said, I find they germinate way better if they've got light. So these little guys, they need the grow lights. Remember and subscribe and like the video, and there's heaps of videos for you to choose to watch next. Go on then, pick one. I promised you them.